Okay, Lance, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, first and foremost, let me say thank you for letting me join the meeting. And I was not on this project in the very beginning. I do remember seeing this on the morning news channel about 4 years ago, I think, and thinking to myself, thank goodness I'm not working that site. It seemed it seemed highly emotional. But the reason I'm here is because the city reached out. Apparently, there was some discussions between the community and the city to try and increase the wireless communication, the emergency preparedness. It sparked on, or sorry, bad term. Due to the fires that happened, and some people were concerned about uh, the ability and the lack of wireless coverage in the area. And the city started reaching out to Verizon, and it ended up coming to me because now this site sits in my bucket of items of what we call a new build site to increase our coverage and capacity. And the need for the coverage has not gone away. That's just the fact of the matter. And all I'm saying is, I'm just here to let the community know again what Verizon proposed in the beginning, why they proposed this, and certain aspects to the proposal, so that everybody has an idea of what's going of why this is the best solution for Verizon's coverage in the area. So let me share my screen here. Stop. Yes.
Of course, let me know if you have any problems sharing your screen.
Thank you. Let's see, share. Okay. So this is the current predicted coverage map for the Den-Layden Rock area. The green is good outdoor service, indoor service, depending on the building structure size. Yellow is good outdoor, indoor service, again, dependent on building structure size, likely mediocre. The white is no service, and the purple is poor outdoor service. So this is the prediction. This is not an actual drive test of the area. This is just what the engineers have been able to come up with via their prediction tools on what we're looking at. Now, because the coverage area is in need, they have looked at trying to find some help. And part of that help is to try and augment or modify the existing sites that are serving the area. And this next slide is the predicted coverage map, although without the Layden site that we've been proposing, is with the augmentation, the modification of two sites that are to the west along 93. One of them we call Quaker Acres. That's south of 82 and 93. There's a couple little cell sites that you can all see when you drive by 93 right there. Verizon's on one of them. And we're going to add what we call a sector, an area to help provide coverage to that southern area of Layden. So you can see the difference in this southern area, around 82 here, and these houses kind of towards the southern end of Layden Rock. See how it's yellow here? There's some purple. When we add a sector over to the Quaker Acres site, that does help. The problem is the topography. That's always our biggest battle in trying to provide coverage to an area. You can see that again, the main road going into Layden Rock, 82 is still suffering, along with, the homes on the on the east side of the clubhouse location. And there's just a lot of issues with the coverage. So in talking with Brett and discussing this, further, there were some questions. Why can't we use these structures like the old rusty tower to the north? Well, the rusty tower to the north is already in an area that is providing some coverage. Granted, it would help that northern area of yellow and purple right there, but the rusty tower isn't a viable option to cover anything that's going to help along 82. Brett had also mentioned, well, what about putting a new tower kind of in the, hold on, let me switch to a different map here. All right. So this is a Google Earth of our existing site. This is Quaker Acres down here. And this is what we call Rocky Flats site up in Candelas. So, oh, sorry. It's twisting on me. Come on. Come back. Other way. There we go. Sorry, technical difficulties. There we go. So this location was also called out as being a possible site for a tower. Maybe it's outside the easement for the potential Northwest Parkway site. And that would be cheaper for us. If we could just do a tower that's right there, that would be the cheapest solution for us. And I even talked with the RF engineer about saying, well, if that would work, why wouldn't we just go talk to the storage facility just to the east across the railroad tracks? And I mean, it's an industrial zone. That makes one component of this whole process, the zoning aspect, much simpler for us, along with the construction costs of a very complicated build at the community center. And again, his response was, we're already covering to the north. What we need is help to the south. So it's kind of like, you're looking for something in the dark and you're shining a light over here in the corner. Well, you're not going to shine another light in that same spot because you already have light. You need to brighten up. You need to provide coverage in an area that isn't receiving it. So those are what we've been kind of looking at. And again, now this is I don't want this to be highly emotional, we're coming in or something like that. I'm just trying to provide information on how Verizon is proposing to resolve this coverage issue for the community. And that comes down to the community center being the most viable option because of where it sits and how it provides coverage everywhere. So if I go back to the slide, so this is, now you're looking at this is a slide still with the modifications to the existing sites helping out. And then this is the coverage with Layden, with the site. So you can see it is a dramatic increase in the coverage. It's huge. It really does what everybody wants the site to do. The engineers need to design a site that meets the objective. We need to build a site that meets the objective, and we need to service our customers and provide a site that meets the objective. I mean, that's all we're talking about. And if we go back to the photo sim of the proposal, so this was back in 2019. I'm sure everybody's pretty familiar with it. So this is the existing community center with this cupola on top. The proposal was to then take the cupola and extend it up and hide the antennas inside the cupola. I see somebody shaking their head already. So that was the design that was put forth, back in 2019. And the whole reason is A, it hides the antennas, B, it doesn't add a new tower to the area, and C, it gets the height that's needed to provide the coverage. So that was what the proposal was back in 2019. That's still the proposal that Verizon feels meets the objective of what they're looking for to provide this coverage solution for the area. So, I mean, I don't have really anything new to add to this. This is the community's decision. I'm just here to present why we're looking at what we're looking at, why we came and how we came to the conclusion that this is the best location, and to also share that they are looking at other solutions to this coverage by augmenting some other sites. But when it comes down to it, no matter how we augment, we can't get this type of coverage. Even with the augmentation of the sites, the modification, adding another sector, we still lack significant coverage to provide the coverage we need, or that if you guys want it. I mean, but again, this is just about what you all want to do, and it's the community decision. I'm not here selling one thing or another. I'm just trying to show you why this is the solution that Verizon came to. And it is all based on what the coverage objective is, how well it's met, and that's pretty much it. So again, like I said, I'm not trying to sell anything here. I'm just trying to educate on why this is the way it is and how well this site works. So that's really all I have until we get into the questions. I know there's going to be, obviously there's going to be, the health, the EME aspects. People are going to ask, I remember there was somebody saying, well, why does it have to be so close to the homes? And why does it have to be here and this and that? And all I can say is that, the guidelines that are in place for health and safety are not put in place by one or two or three agencies over a couple studies. These are 20 years worth of studies through multiple agencies, and not just the US either. This is the European standards as well. We all follow the same safety. The agencies have all stated that this is the best way to provide a safe environment. And these are the standards. And they are 50 times below what they think is the minimum level. And this, I don't want to get into it too much, but the other big thing is that there is a difference between ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. Okay. That's the very first thing that you need to understand, or everybody should understand. The difference is ionizing is like going in for an X-ray. Ionizing is, non-ionizing is not. So I know that there's, people out there. I mean, everybody has a study that says something that they want. But, if it comes down to that, I mean, the only thing I can say is that Verizon follows the guidelines that are set forth for the health and safety by the FCC, and that is all set forth by multiple agencies. And I would just say, compare the science, compare the science between studies. And I think the FCC studies with all the nations and everybody else's, has the reputation for most accuracy. Anyways,
Thank you very much, Lance. Appreciate that. So to keep things orderly, we're gonna take questions from board members only at this time, and I would propose that we'll just do this in the order of the agenda. If that's okay with the board, so each board member will get a chance to ask their questions, hear from Lance, and that will be recorded as part of the recording. Does that work for the board? Okay, so the first person up is you, Brett.
Sorry about that. It took me a while to get the unmute to work. Lance, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Appreciate your going through this, putting this together and presenting for us. Couple of quick questions for you. One, I want to thank Pam Turner McCombs, who helped me out with some Q&A, spent some time with Lance, made my job a lot easier. So thank you, Pam. Lance, the proposed facility in the clubhouse, would this be big enough for all three providers? Would all three providers have room to be able to put antenna equipment and ground equipment into this facility?
As it stands, no. But it could be built so that there could be multiple carriers in the cupola. It could be situated and built, but it would be pretty big. So if you think about a tower just sitting there by itself, the antennas are typically put in a vertical orientation of one above the other. So the more carriers you add, typically you need to increase the height. Let's say, just as a rule of thumb, they have a 10-foot envelope per carrier. That allows for the antennas of one carrier not to be overlapping the antennas of another carrier from the bottom to the top. And so, because, and I'm not sure exactly the dimension of the cupola. Does anybody happen to know what the width is of that, the length and width? Is it like
10 by 10,
12 feet?
12, maybe 12 by 12. Yeah.
Something
Decent
like
guess.
that. So, and that's a pretty standard size to allow for a 3-sector site on one plane of one height, say, whatever height that is, 60 feet or something like that. So to add in multiple carriers, you would typically need to add in 10 feet of height for each carrier.
And how big is the base unit installation for the base machinery and batteries and whatnot?
Typically, the ground equipment is an area approximately 12 by 20, something like that. And that would be outdoors. We could create a enclosure for that. But they typically, nowadays just use outdoor cabinets, kind of like, kind of the size of a refrigerator for the radios to go inside.
Okay. Those are my questions on that topic, Megan. Do you want to go to another board member and then come back to me?
Pleasure of the board. You want to just keep going through kind of round and round through all 5 names, or you want to just let someone ask all the questions they have?
I get a lot. It should go around and around.
Okay, Scott, you're up. You're on mute, Scott, if you are asking a question.
Can anything down with these windows to make them less ugly?
Yes. Yeah, this is okay. Yes. Yes, we can. Now, this was an early photo sim done as a presentation to show the concept. But yes, we can do more than just this, and that is something that we could discuss. If if that was part of the, requirement of approval that, the windows be, changed up somehow, we do a better job with the aesthetic appeal of the windows and design. I believe when they did this, it was really, again, just to show the concept of extending and hiding the antennas. So yes, there are things we can do now. If you wanted actual windows, I don't know that we can do actual windows, and then you would see the antennas. So that's kind of the trade-off. If we had, by utilizing this, the antennas are not seen. And I don't know, that's a design parameter that you would all discuss as to, how we designed it, and work with us on that and what we can do. But yes, there are things that we can do. This is a very rudimentary, although pretty, decent illustration of the concept of enclosing the site.
Okay. In your knowledge, is it true that you get more signal, I guess you could call it, to your holding a regular cellular phone than from these cell towers?
I don't understand what you're saying.
Well, what people are afraid of is the radiation, the signals from the cell towers. And I was understanding that you get more from having the phone right next to your head than you get from a cell tower hundreds of feet away.
Yeah, so the cell sites are all managed, are all, we can show you the propagation of this. But yes, it is below the FCC guidelines in terms of what an antenna puts out for the general public. And it is my understanding, I'm not an RF engineer, but I understand it the same way you do, that it's not necessarily that it's more, but that I don't know how to say it. Not that it's more, but the radio itself, your phone itself is, in that proximity is actually, yes, more of a, yeah, I guess I would have to say more of a issue than the antenna array. Yeah.
All right, that was my two.
Thank you, Scott. Up next, we have Jeff.
Thanks for being here tonight. In your presentation, you mentioned some studies that have been done. Are those studies included in your presentation? Are the links to them in your presentation?
Yeah, I can send you the links. I mean, basically, we use the CITA. Let me get to that. So, okay. So this is the links I can send you. And this is basically just the CTIA website. And they have a bunch of information on here. And again, like, these are not just studies from a single person, but you got the World Health Organization, you've got the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FCC. You've got there's a ton of information. Canada, the European Commission, the UK, the Norwegian Institute of Public Health. You have the statements from them. You can go on. You have frequently asked questions. People can go in there and look at ask questions about what they're specifically concerned with. So here's a good one. Like, what is the standard for testing and assuring the safety of wireless devices? So this goes into what that is, and the IEEE and the National Council of Radiation, and what these groups have found in terms of what the measurements and safety levels are. So yeah, this is basically a very good go-to website to answer all questions.
Okay, and that's included in the presentation, or we will get access to that?
I'll send that link I can send that link to Brett.
Yep. Okay. Um, next question from just listening, the antenna would be only for Verizon customers, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So, yep.
And then when way I understood it is we would have to have a tower if there were three carriers, Verizon, Sprint, and I don't know what the third one is. We'd have to have a tower or that was 30 feet tall. Is that right? To be able
Well,
to handle all three?
so now I can't, so if, okay, let me answer this in two parts for you. I can't speak to what T-Mobile or AT&T or Dish, how their coverage is. I don't know how their coverage is.
Okay.
I only know how Verizon's is in the area, and I only know that this would be Verizon's solution.
Right.
So
Yeah, I understand that, but when we were, rather somebody asked a question about the other providers, and it sounded like you have to stack the 10-foot antennas on top of each other. Is that right? Did I understand that right?
that is the standard protocol, is to
Okay.
use vertical separation between the antennas to get the antennas in the same spot.
Okay.
Now, there is, if you've seen, I'm sure you've seen buildings where the antennas are on the, outside of the building, on the wall mounted, and they're, like maybe a set of antennas on one corner, and then there's another set of antennas on another corner. So they can do what's called horizontal separation, but that horizontal separation is a lot greater than the cupola is wide. So to get multiple
Okay.
sets, to get two carriers of antennas on the same rad center, you would need a bigger cupola.
Okay. Next question. In the presentation, I didn't see anything regarding any lease terms.
Okay, yeah, and we haven't really got to those, but basically, if the board decided to do this, Verizon would pay, they would take care of the construction costs, of course, all the permitting, construction costs, and then they would pay the HOA $2,000 a month for the use of that property. And then and that would be uh, a non-exclusive lease. So in the event that AT&T or T-Mobile came back and said, you know what, we want to do this as well. Our customers are they need coverage. You could lease space to them as well if you wanted to raise the size of the cupola.
Okay. I think that was all the questions that I had for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Christian.
All right, well, hi, thanks for being here. Everybody wants service, but nobody wants it in their backyard, and I'm a hard no on this tower in the middle of our community here. It's, it's an eyesore right now looking at it. I'm wondering if there's any other possibilities like Table Mesa, Partridge Park, end of Zircon. Can you put it over by power lines by 74th Plaza Place and by 470? Is there anywhere else we can put this that won't be where my kids play or at the pool? I'm reading stuff on the FCC being successfully sued over EMF exposure in 2021. This is something we're putting right in the middle of our community. And the first person that gets sick, they're going to come down on us. And so I'm looking for alternative spots. I know you really want it at the pool, but I'm a hard no. What else can you give us?
Well, and that's what we were trying to look at, and you've got the easement, for, we can't do anything, in an easement for, the parkway. B, the XL towers, those would be great. I would love it if XL would allow us to put antennas at the top of their transmission towers. That would make my life very simple in a lot of ways. However, XL has a requirement now, and it's happened over the past few years, that no carrier puts antennas any higher than 12 feet below the lowest conductor on the tower. So you see these towers, and I you travel around and I see antennas on other transmission towers and stuff, and it's like, oh, it's such a great solution because it's already there, it has height, it seems like the perfect solution. But unfortunately, XL's new directive, or it's not actually that new, is this, directive that they can't be, any higher than 12 feet below the lowest conductor, which means, most of the time that the site doesn't work unless it's right up on top of the hill in and of itself. And I did look at the towers, up here, north of West 87th Drive, going up through there. And again, everything that comes through there ends up coming, I believe, down across the middle here, down to the south, correct? As I keep turning on.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's places in Westridge Park or even the landfill. I just feel like, like they might have something high up there, but I just feel like having this right in the middle of our community, I feel like there's got to be other areas that will work. I just.
No, and I understand. I mean, it's, and I'm just here to answer questions and show you, I wish there was, I mean, but nothing works as good as that. And, that's, I'm just here to answer questions and, see if it goes through, I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just this is, again, the only reason I'm here is because, the city reached out because of these other concerns about coverage, and it went up to Verizon and came down to me. And, that's why I'm here.
I just don't want to rehash what we've already gone through 4 years ago. I feel like maybe Partridge Park has adequate, height across from us, over by Table Mesa. If you pull it over, there seems like there's elevations around us that are equal to our clubhouse that are to the south of us that would possibly work. That's just like right in there where you just pulled from, that's what, Quaker Acres over there. And, there's elevation on that side there.
Right.
And that would, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I believe me, I mean, I'm not the RF engineer, and I would just go back to the coverage map, and you would think, so like you said, with what I don't, it's hard for me is look at where Layden is in terms of this good coverage, and then all of a sudden it just drops off over here to the northwest, like nothing. Like, I mean, the sites are designed to provide the coverage where it's needed, and it's you can't really, I can't speak to it. All I can tell you is what the RF engineer have been working on and trying to solve, and that's why they've been looking at the solutions that they have with their site down here at Quaker Acres, trying to predict, add a sector onto that to try and get some coverage up into Dunlayden, and to modify Rocky Flats to help out more over here instead of just this northern area that gets the coverage from Rocky Flats. And then, like you mentioned, the landfill, something over at the landfill. Well, again, now we're right between two sites that from an RF standpoint, almost directly in line. It's not even offset at all. So that's an issue from them from from an RF standpoint. So that's, again, it's, I'm not looking to, rehash anything again myself. I'm just here to answer questions because it sounded like the community was concerned about this and wanted some answers as to the coverage.
And I understand that. I mean, I appreciate you being here. Thank you. I just, the same proposal that was given to us 4 years ago in our our community members, there was a huge outcry, and and we're already starting to get a bit of that. I'm just, don't come back with the same proposal. I'd like to see other places that other than what we've already rehashed. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thanks, Christian. Hannes, you're up.
Okay. Hi, Lance. Thanks for your presentation and for braving this type of scenario. I know it's daunting. Something I've heard going around is that might be that Verizon is pushing for the cell tower because it saves money.
Sorry.
In that the electricity is already there. There's a structure there. So if you could address that, I think that it would answer some questions that are out there.
This is not a money-saving design by any means. This is a concealed cupola like this is one of the most expensive things that we can design. It would be, as I said earlier in the meeting when we were trying to look at the other options of the rusty tower and what I called the HOA Alt-1 that Brent pointed out as a circle where, some ground. All of this would be, so much cheaper, especially if this worked from an RF standpoint, because, maybe it would be very simple. This is an industrial zoned area right here. This, if it worked from an RF standpoint, if they said, yeah, we like that, it would be a fraction of the cost to put a tower up there than it would be to build a enclosed cupola with RF transparent materials and everything. No, it is not. The running power and fiber to a site is one of the most minimal costs that they have in terms of building a site. This is multiple times the expense of anything else.
Thank you. And I think we're back to Brett.
Okay, Brett.
All right. Hey, Lance, I appreciate the fact that you're here, and I'm very glad we're having this conversation. I'm very supportive of trying to find a way to bring improved cell phone coverage to Leiden Rock. I think it's important to a lot of our residents, and I really want to find a way to get something done here. I also very much appreciate the improvements that are being considered for other sites. Anything that will help our residents with their cell phone coverage is a good thing. So I appreciate the work they're doing on those other two sites that you mentioned. If you don't mind, I want to ask just a little bit about your relationship or Rutherford Enterprises relationship to Verizon. Do you guys work solely for Verizon?
Well, yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's basically, so Rutherford Enterprises is a contractor to Verizon. We are not employees.
Okay.
We are what we call a site acquisition agent. But we mainly work with Verizon as our sole client, just because it's easier and more effective and efficient for us to understand a client very well and their processes, rather than work with multiple different clients and dilute our effectiveness, basically.
Understanding that makes sense from a business point of view. If we wanted to develop a location that would be where we could also have AT&T and T-Mobile involved as well, would we need to be going to a different firm, or is that something that you might be able to help us with since you're already involved in this process? What I'm saying is, if we were to develop a tower someplace else, could you help us with that through your firm, or would I need to go to American Tower or one of those guys?
Well, you wouldn't want to go to an American Tower. So the way how it's kind of set up, so you have like you mentioned, there's companies out there that are tower companies, and that's what they do is they build a site that's a multi-carrier site. It's kind of like building a quadplex, or a bunch of duplexes. They're the developer, and then they lease out space. It would actually be more beneficial for you to find a spot that worked, that worked, and then you just have one of the companies build a tower for you and just lease out enough space for the ground, and then have the other carriers would come in and then lease ground space for their equipment from you, and then tower space from whoever built the tower. Or if you built your own tower, you could build your own tower. If you were willing to get into the FCC and FAA, dealing with all that from a tower owner standpoint, you could do something like that. The issue that you're going to run into is it's not just the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. It has to work as well. Right. That's the biggest hurdle that you're going to face from that standpoint.
And we would need a professional to be able to help us figure out what that location might be that would be beneficial for all. I very much understand that this is the best spot for Verizon, and the coverage map that you throw out shows that it's the very best location. I'm hoping we can find a location that's good enough that will provide coverage to the areas that are lacking, and yet still be robust enough to attract a cell phone company to be interested, as well as competitors. My understanding is a cell phone tower costs about $350,000 to build, rough and tough, kind of ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, it depends on a lot of factors, but I would say, that's probably a high estimate. Okay. For just it depends on if you're just doing a regular tower. If you're just gonna throw some steel in the ground, and you don't have to make it a monopine, you don't have to build some type of clock tower or something like that, and then you're probably looking, just some steel in the ground at $350 at a high price.
Okay. And if we rented ground space, that tower, cell phone leases for the city of Arvada are about $2,500 a month. And if we had all three carriers on there, that'd be $7,500 a month. And that would pay for a cell phone tower in less than 4 years. And
I mean, the math is there.
If we find the right spot, and that's the secret sauce, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
That is it. It's, because you could say, and that's why I can't speak to, say, T-Mobile or AT&T, what their coverage looks like in the area. I can only speak to what Verizon, how Verizon is covering the area and what their solution is. So, okay. Yeah. But I mean, that is, that's something, that's definitely an option that you could look at.
Okay. And before I continue, I want to ask my other board members if they need me to yield for a little bit so somebody else can ask some questions. Otherwise, I can keep going.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Lance. It's super helpful. Like I said, I'm very glad you're here. My understanding is that cell phone companies don't build towers though independently.
Well, so they do. So, one of the things there's multiple components. So there are tower companies that will go out and, they will act just like a developer for the carriers, and try and build get permission to build a site for Verizon or T-Mobile or AT&T. And that is one component of building new sites. There are also components where an individual like myself works for Verizon and goes out and finds a solution that Verizon builds solely. So Verizon has built all the towers, all the sites, and again, I shouldn't just lead with towers, because most of the stuff that I do in terms of citing Verizon is not a tower. It's usually an existing structure, because there's a hierarchy of how we want to proceed. And that is utilize an existing structure, find a solution that does not require a new steel in the air, and work from the simplest to the most difficult, which is steel in the air in some shape or form, clock tower, whatever. But even though Verizon would build a tower and own it, they can still lease or horse trade with a AT&T or a T-Mobile to locate on a tower. So a lot of times how this works is, they do a lot of horse trading where they'll say, okay, well, you have a tower over here, AT&T has tower A and Verizon has tower B, and they both want on each other's tower. So then they'll say, okay, we'll give you, space on the tower for the antennas, but the other component is the ground space. And this is where, the HOA could benefit from, a carrier building a tower and only leasing enough ground space for their equipment. Because although the carrier could provide, rights to the tower space, the tower verticality, like the rad height, they can't provide land rights that they don't have. So they can't lease space that they don't have, which then allows the landowner to increase their revenue by then leasing that ground space. So I see where you're going with this. There's, you're looking at different ways to solve a problem. And one is, creating a multi-carrier site that the HOA would build. Or two, seeing if a carrier would be interested in one of the locations that, the HOA deems acceptable, and then building that site, but then allowing the HOA to, gain some revenue from additional ground space, which is, it's good thinking. And again, it just depends on the carrier's needs for that site and how it fits into their RF map.
Okay, that's fantastic.
But they are options. They are definitely options.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Might you be able to put us into site acquisition specialists that work for T-Mobile, or I'm sorry, I don't mean to ask you to send us to your competition. And we'll always come back to you first because you came to us. But would you have contacts that we could talk to that might be able to help us figure that out? I've got to yield to Scott if you answer that.
I can check. All the people that I know that I work with are all Verizon site acquisition agents.
Fair enough. I'm going to yield to Scott.
I'm sorry, Brett. I don't remember questions all that long.
You're fine.
Really quick, 3 questions, not a whole lot of discussions. How long cell towers been around homes?
Oh, since 96. I don't know. I don't know, since before 96. I've been doing this since January 10th of 1996, and I've heard and seen it all. But yeah, I'm still doing the same thing, just trying to get coverage in areas that don't have coverage or modifying existing sites. And it's the same thing over and over.
How many, do you know how many Verizon customers we have in Line Rock? Or who?
Oh, I don't know. I don't. So just a little education on how this works. Verizon, as they're looking at their network, sees coverage areas that are in need of coverage. And, you know, they are, you know, a lot of times they're topography and home density related, you know, and that's one of the issues. That's the two big issues that Layton Rock has: topography and density.
Yes.
So what happens is Verizon sees the need, a hole, or they have calls, their network, you know, says there's an issue over here. And the RF engineer starts looking at possible solutions, and they then send it to us as an investigator, basically, and say, all right, if we need to increase our coverage over here, if we need to provide coverage, how would we do that? How can we get it done within these parameters? And we don't get to look very far. An RF engineer will put a dot on a map. And, you know, in this situation, you know, we have about a quarter mile diameter to look, you know, and so it because the network is mature, but it still has these problem areas, and there's still so much building going on, the capacity issues start to really raise their head. And so we can't just throw a site over here, because if I looked at this site, you know, I would say, wow, you know, I would have come to the same conclusion, which was, you know, hey, let's talk to the HOA. Let's see if they'll let us raise the cupola and hide the antennas in there. You know, that solves our problems. But again, you know, it's a community decision. So, but that's how we look at it, you know, is we have a very small area in which to find height for some antennas, and we figure out how to achieve that in the best course of action. And you know, sometimes it doesn't work. You know, sometimes, you know, like this, I mean, we can't proceed if the community and the HOA doesn't, you know, they don't want us to. We can't. All we can do is say, you know, we can just ask permission and see what happens. So
yeah. So, okay, my third and last final question is, I've been seeing two pieces of information that's the most available out there, and both of them are very biased. CTIA is obviously a trade organization for the cell company, so their information is going to be very positive, versus the other, I forget the name, it's another piece of information that's it's going to find minuscule studies, so it's negative. Personally, I trust what the government tells me, the FCC and, you know, CDC. Are there other third-party sources that someone might be more inclined to study or get sources from, get information from?
yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm not a EME health expert by any means.
Okay.
And you know, and although the CTIA is, you know, one site, you know, it isn't just quoting their information. You know, it's them accumulating all the information from all their sources. So,
right. Well, I'm just I'm hearing enough questions here from the pet homeowners, and
I'm sure
some people would look at more fringe studies, and
Oh,
Um,
I've
and
heard it all.
small studies that have not been peer reviewed, and other studies, maybe, massive studies around the world. And so I just want to throw that out there. So I am all done with questions. I will not raise my hand again.
I think that brings us back to you, Jeff, in the round robin.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Christian,
Yeah, me neither.
Tanis,
None, none here either.
okay, Brett, back to you.
Thank you. And Scott, raise your hand all you want. I agree with Scott's comments that the source of information is incredibly important, and there's a lot of divisive information out there on both sides. The best information that I could find, which is fairly simple, is from the American Cancer Society, which I think is pretty solid. They note that in relation to health risks from cell phone towers, they say, at this time, there's no strong evidence that RF waves from cell phone towers causes any noticeable health effects. However, this does not mean that RF waves from cell towers have been proven to be absolutely safe. Most expert organizations agree that more research is needed to help clarify this, especially for any possible long-term effects. So that's the American Cancer Society spiel. Lance, would you mind going back to your presentation to slide, I think it's 8?
Slide 8. Hold on.
I think
Slide
so.
Hold on. I'm having.
It's a coverage map.
Hold on. Screen share. All right, the coverage map.
Yeah.
There we go.
And if we could go back one more, this one here is the one that interests me. This is after the improvements to the other cell sites.
Yes.
And it looks like we still have challenges for, 82nd is still a nightmare. But it looks like there's going to be ballparking this 30 homes with issues. Is that seemed to be
Yeah, and I don't know.
kind of hard to tell from the line.
It's basically, these homes here for sure. Everything on the, that east side
Right.
of the community center.
And then some in the Daybreak Park area along what we call the fingers. Okay, thank you for that. And then can we go down to the map that shows the sites that
These?
yeah, this one here. Now you mentioned that Verizon, when I look at HOA alternate 1, we mentioned that Verizon already has coverage on that side, on the northern side.
Well, go ahead.
But would this location also provide coverage? It's a 360 broadcast, if I'm correct. Would it also extend down to fill that purple void on the last map?
That I don't know. He did not. I know the RF engineer looked at it. Why is it not turning? Let's get this. The problem is, it would help this. I'm guessing. I mean, I'm not the engineer, but it seems like it would help. What is this, Layden Rock Boulevard or something?
Yeah, right.
But I mean, I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that it would help this. But again, everything down here is, would be gone. So.
Right. I'm worried about our residents. 82nd is somebody else's problem. I want to make sure we get coverage for our residents. So that probably would provide coverage from this alternative, down towards into the sections of our community where it would be deficient. Am
I
I?
would, and I would have, I mean, I would have to have the RF engineer run a specific plot for that.
Okay. Is that difficult to do? I don't know if I'm asking a lot.
It's not simple,
Okay.
but I would imagine he would be able to do it.
Okay. I don't want to ask somebody to do a whole ton of work based on a hypothetical. If it's easy,
Yeah.
if it's hard, then no.
Well, and
and-
I'm
and-
wondering,
and
Brett,
we want
can I
to look
just-
at all the options. You know, we do. You know, it was, yeah. We want to look at it.
Okay. I'll yield to Christian.
What about at the end of the string of pearls there in that triangle area that we were thinking about putting some kind of bench or park off to your left with the hand up and off to the left? That's like a really big hill that you're going up right there. Yep, keep going to the left, and right there, there's like an empty space. There's like not many houses in that area, and it's got some major height, like a lot of elevation. It's definitely higher than the clubhouse. You know, there's two houses, but across the street is, or that's not the string of pearls, is it? Hold on, go back out a
Yep.
little. Oh,
Yep.
maybe it's actually to the left a little bit more. There's that dirt spot right there. Go up that street right there. Zoom in right, no, to the right. Zoom in right there. Yep. That dirt spot right there is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And
And now, yeah. And now we're, basically just across the street from the existing site.
Oh, gotcha. I'm just seeing the only two proposal spots right now, and we're really heavily focusing on the tower at the pool. I'm just trying to figure out another spot that has the elevation, that we can utilize. It just doesn't, I don't know.
Christian, may I step back
Yeah,
in?
and that really is, I mean, that's the difficulty, that's the difficulty of this area. I mean, it's not flat. So, you have the terrain issues. Right. You have, obviously the clubhouse is a, I did not think that this was gonna go anywhere. I was just, again, like I said from the beginning, I was just here to answer questions as to why this works for Verizon. I had no, I had no belief that it would really go anywhere, but that's what this issue, that's why this site, that's why they came up with this site. I mean, it's just so good from that standpoint.
What about
just
over by
does everything.
470? I mean, what is the easement that we have next to 470? Is there anything that we can put along it? Like right in there somewhere, or
Well,
off to the right?
I don't know what the easement rights are, and again, you'd be right behind some people's houses. Like we even tried looking at small cells. We tried looking at a way to do small cells in the area, and we couldn't find a way where we didn't need like 20 small cells. And then we thought, well, if it's with one macro site at the clubhouse, is that versus 20 small cells, or 25 small cells throughout the community, where you're replacing I think an XL light pole. I mean, it just it seems like we're it's the same issue. You all of a sudden now one person or four people's houses have a small cell in front of them, and it's still by the time you add up all the small cells, you're at 100 homes that are directly impacted from that standpoint of having a site, which seems to be the main concern, is the impact of the site.
Right.
So it was it's a very tough puzzle to solve, as we're seeing.
Christian, you okay if I step back in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, I do understand that the clubhouse is the preferred location for Verizon and will provide the best coverage. It's like so many things in life. You know, the best house is the one on the very top of the hill. I don't live there, but my house that I do have, which is a little lesser, works just fine. You know, best car may be a Ferrari, but I'll stick with my Ram pickup because it's lesser, but it's fine.
Oh, come on, Brett, you
If
know you'd have a Ferrari.
oh, well, it would, but along that line of reasoning, if we can find a site which is lesser, it's not quite as good, but gets us where we need to be for our community, that's somewhere that I would really like us to focus on, kind of following along Christian's line of thinking. Can we find another site? And one thing I want to, and you mentioned all the issues with that, but one thing I want to point out is we may be able to participate in funding a site, a lesser site, if it's not as profitable for Verizon because it doesn't cover as much room. Could we offer more favorable lease terms? Could we incent
Well,
Verizon?
and Brett, it's not, obviously it's not the development cost that is driving this from Verizon's mind at all, because this is the most expensive way to build a site, is to take the top off of something and redo it with RF transparent material and reinforce it and all that stuff. And it's not a development cost. It's really about getting the site. And if there is, I see the writing on the wall with all this, and I'm just, would a lesser site, is that would a lesser site that doesn't do what Verizon needs it to do? I mean, that's probably where we're going, where we're going to end up. And I don't know. I don't know, if that does what that solves the problem, enough of a coverage objective met. It's like, do you, I don't want to, it's kind of a bad analogy, but I mean, when you go to school, you want to get an A, right? You don't go to school to get a C, but it's, in this case, I mean, if all we can do is get a B, or a C, maybe that does work. I don't know at this point. But we can keep researching it. All I'm, like I've said from the beginning, I'm just here to show you why Verizon picked what they picked, and to let you all, and it's all in your hands. So
well, I appreciate that, but we're going to pick your brain as an expert because hey, listen, the community needs the help. The community needs the coverage, and
yes, they do.
We want to try to find a way to find that, while at the same time, avoiding a lot of angst that. There may be a win-win here somewhere.
Oh, believe me, I don't want angst towards me either. I get it enough. So,
so I've got two final questions. And again, I can't thank you enough for being here, and this isn't meant to be hostile at all. When you said that you were going to go back to the RF engineers and look at this alternative, but is it possible we could expand the search area a little bit outside of our community? Somewhere along Highway 80, somewhere along Highway or 82nd Avenue, or someplace that just where we don't have to try and find the locations. You guys, who are the experts, who are the RF engineers, can find the location if this one doesn't work.
Well, going outside that, the problem, I mean, again, I'm not the RF engineer.
Sure. Understand.
And when they look at this, this is what they came up with.
Okay.
This was it.
Okay.
You know, and I guess, I mean, I guess, you know, from this standpoint, you know, I would just say, you know, I don't know, just if you make, you know, if the Den Layden is just done, if this site is just done, if it's not gonna go through, if it's gonna create too many issues, if you know that's just it, if it's just done, then you know we'll have to try and find something else. You know, some other B or C maybe. I don't know what'll happen with that.
And
You
we
know,
are willing to, I, for one, I'm only one of 5 votes, but from my perspective, we're willing to participate in that to try and help that come into being, because we do want to find something like that. I can't speak for my other board members. Last question. This is 4G technology. This is older technology than what's currently out there.
Oh, it'll be 5. Yeah, every site's gonna be 5G. Oh, you mean on the slide?
Yeah, yeah. Is this a 5G tower? Or is this a 4G?
Well, it will be. I mean, everything nowadays has 5G on it. It has a
Okay.
5G antenna. Yeah,
But
but the 4G LTE data is what they use to predict the coverage areas.
gotcha.
So even though it's the 4G LTE, it's not 5G. It's how they use their model to most accurately provide a coverage map.
So this would have 5G
Oh,
transmitters and 4G receptors or transmitters. It would have
yeah,
both.
they would have, yeah, it would be 4G and 5G antennas, definitely.
Okay. Hey, thanks for putting up with all of that. I very much appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one more. Can you zoom out between the two? So we're gonna do 2 by side. Pull down a little bit. So in essence, what I'm seeing is this cell tower is really only gain is about 30 homes on the east side of the phase 1. That's what I'm gleaning from this, that the yellow seem to be in the same area. So all this work, all this talk, we're only gaining maybe 100 homes.
Yeah, Barber Gulch, basically.
Well, no, Christian, it's the house that's next to the east of the clubhouse. They're all purple.
Yeah, that's Barber Gulch. That's all.
There's homes on the outer rim of the homes or homes. So, I mean, is that what I'm understanding, that really for residential homes, it's just the outer rim on the east side of the clubhouse?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you know, again, this is a coverage map, but, and then whatever's to the east over there. And then, you know, the road that everybody drives in, you know, I guess that's, you know, 80 seconds, is that how everybody gets in and out of the community?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a huge gain with that. Yeah, okay. So I was just want to look at these side by side one time. Thank you.
Are there any additional questions from any board members? Hearing none. Lance, any closing remarks you want to say?
You know, again, you know, there's not a lot I can say. I didn't mean to stir up anything with the community. You know, that's not, again, this came about because of what I thought was a community engagement for this. And you know, it's really, we're just presenting. I know this was, you know, the same presentation that was back that got turned down in 2019, but it's just what provides the best coverage and does the job. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lance.
Thank you, Lance.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Lance.
Lance.
If it's okay with the board, would you like the recording to be turned off now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Give me just a moment.